Hi, everybody, and welcome to the live stream. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Lori Vallow Daybell's Alibi. It's so paper thin that it makes you want to say, are you sure? Are you absolutely sure? Would you like to use a lifeline? Maybe call a friend. Is this your final answer? Because we have more time, although we really don't, because trial is imminent. The jury is already has filled out questionnaires. There was a hearing today, and trial is starting really, really soon. Jury final selection, as I understand it, is going to be Monday, and that may take some time, and then the trial. But so this is the alibi. We'll unpack it. I'll talk about why I think it's weak, and she may well end up presenting something different at trial. So we'll talk about what she's filed so far. We're also going to touch briefly on Sam Bankman-Fried, the founder of FTX, who is now facing even more charges, these pretty egregious ones about bribing a Chinese official. And we'll be talking about Bryan Kohberger. Just a quick update, talking about some good news for him in the Idaho Murders case, the murders of the 4 college students. So let's start with Lori Vallow Daybell, because we're going to be covering that for the next number of weeks as she goes into trial. Lori Vallow Daybell is accused of killing her own 7-year-old son, JJ, and 16-year-old daughter, Tylee. She's also accused of conspiring to kill Tammy Daybell. Tammy Daybell was the wife of the man who is now Lori's husband, Chad Daybell. Chad and Lori married just 2 weeks after Tammy suddenly died at age 49. Now, trial is here. And let's talk for just really briefly, what's an alibi? An alibi is just when you present some evidence, a theory, or an explanation about why you could not possibly have committed the crime because you weren't there. You have something else you were doing, somewhere else you were. You couldn't have been the person. Now, and I do want to make this statement up front. Lori Vallow Daybell is absolutely innocent until she is proven guilty. She doesn't have to have an alibi at all. The prosecution bears the burden of proving that she's the one who did the crime she's now has been charged with, which is the murders and the conspiracy to murder. So the jury could find it doesn't buy her alibi and still find her not guilty because she's not responsible for coming up with an alibi. She's not responsible for that. She doesn't have to. But let's talk first. What was the alibi that Lori Vallow Daybell filed? She filed it in January, and I want to go through it now with the evidence that we know. Remember, we're just at the outset of trial. There will be much, much more evidence that will be presented by both sides as we go into trial. Essentially, when it comes to the deaths of JJ and Tylee, Lori blames her brother, Alex. That's somewhat convenient. Alex is not here to defend himself. He also is dead, said to be from a heart attack. Lori, here's her statement. She says, Lori Vallow, and I'll just show it to you on the screen. I've got it right here. So she filed this notice of alibi, and she said Lori Vallow was in her own apartment in Rexburg, Idaho, when JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan died in the apartment of Alex Cox, that's Lori's brother, in Rexburg, Idaho. Defendant was with Melanie Gibb, that's Lori's best friend, former best friend, David Warwick, and Chad Daybell. David Warwick is or was Melanie's boyfriend, and Chad Daybell is, of course, the other defendant related to this case. He won't be tried at the same time as Lori. He is now her husband, and they married 2 weeks after the death of Tammy Daybell, as I said. So that's what the alibi is going to be for them. Let's go through what that is and how much proof there is of that. I want to do a quick timeline to give you an overview perspective of sort of what's happened in the case and what the facts are. Now, Tylee, the 16-year-old daughter, was last seen on a day trip to Yellowstone National Park. She was never seen again after this day trip. And I'm show you another photo from that day. That is JJ and Lori. This was Tylee hugging her little brother, JJ, and that is Alex Cox, the brother, in the background there. And then this is Lori Vallow Daybell with JJ. So on that September 8th, and they all go to Yellowstone. Now, on September 9th, that, in other words, the wee hours of the morning after the Yellowstone trip, between 2:42 and 3:37 a.m., Alex's cell phone pings at Lori's house, from what we've been told. Then later that morning, 9:21 to 10:39, Alex's cell phone, in between, Alex goes back to his house, and that's where his cell phone is. Alex's cell phone pings at Chad Daybell's property. Now that's important and relevant because Tylee's body was found buried in Chad's backyard. On September 9th, also, Chad texted his then wife, Tammy, and said, well, I've had an interesting morning. I just felt should burn all of the limb debris by the fire pit before it got too soaked by the coming storms. While did so, spotted big raccoon along the fence. Hurried and got my gun, and he was still walking along. Got close enough that one shot did the trick. He is now in our pet cemetery. Fun times. Now, this is on September 9th, and the prosecution says that dovetails with the fact that Tylee's body was in fact burned and found buried in the pet cemetery. And that text by Chad to his wife, Tammy, was just a cover-up to excuse and explain what she might see, which was that the fire pit had had a fire in it and that there had been some kind of disturbance of the earth there in the pet cemetery. So about a week later, on September 17th, JJ was seen playing in the yard on a neighbor's doorbell cam. So JJ is still alive on September 17th. Nobody is seeing Tylee anymore. On September 19th, Lori's friend Melanie Gibb comes for a visit, and Lori tells Melanie Gibb, according to Melanie, that Tylee is away at Brigham Young University, that she's in college, and that's why she's not there. And Lori does tell Melanie that JJ, the son, still there, has been acting like a zombie. Then on September 22nd, and I'll do a whole timeline for you like I did with the Murdaugh case, but Lori sends JJ to Alex's house because he's been acting up, and they return later, and it appears JJ is asleep on Alex's shoulder. Alex, remember, is the brother. We know this because Melanie Gibb was there at the house staying with Lori at the time. On September 23rd, Melanie woke up that next morning after JJ has been supposedly asleep on Alex's shoulder. Melanie wakes up and JJ's gone. Lori tells Melanie JJ was acting like a zombie, that he climbed up on the kitchen counter, knocked a fridge magnet off that depicted Jesus, and so he spent the night with Alex. Now, Lori says JJ's going to be away with his grandma Kay until Chad and Lori can complete their mission being to lead in the end times, to lead on behalf of the church in the end times. On that same day, again, September 23rd, Alex Cox, again, according to prosecution data, visits Chad's property from 9:55 to 10:12 a.m. Again, this is important because JJ was found buried in Chad's backyard, not in the same place that Tylee was buried, but in another location in the backyard. That same day, Lori withdrew JJ from school, saying, I'm going to homeschool from now on. A few weeks later, on October 19th, Tammy Daybell suddenly dies. And then 2 weeks after that, on November 5th, Chad and Lori marry. So here are some of the issues that I see with the alibi that has so far been offered by Lori. First of all, how does she know exactly when Tylee and JJ died? Enough so she can say, here's an alibi. I'm so sure of when they died that I can tell you exactly where I was. I was in my apartment, and I can even say exactly the names of the people who were with me. That's really strange because they appear to have died at different times, and you would think she would be unclear on exactly when that happened. Now, the second problem I can see with it is, how does she know exactly where they died? Because she's very specific. They died in her brother Alex's apartment. Is she admitting that she knew that? How does she know that? They died at different times, but she's saying they both occurred in the same location, at Alex's apartment. Also, they were buried separately in different places, as I said, in the backyard. So the chances that you were in the exact same spot, that Lori was in the same spot with the exact same people, and and that they were both killed in the same location 2 separate times, that doesn't even make sense, because Melanie Gibb was there from out of town. So Melanie Gibb wouldn't have been there when Tylee died. And furthermore, when Melanie got there, Tylee wasn't there. And Lori said she was off at university. She was off at Brigham Young University. So all of that doesn't really make a lot of sense, and I think will fairly quickly fall apart if Lori attempts to use that alibi. Now, the third problem I can see is that both children were found buried in Lori Vallow's soon-to-be husband's backyard by her brother. That's what she's going to be alleging. She's going to be blaming Alex because she says they both died in his apartment. And what a coincidence that they were both then married in her husband's, soon-to-be husband's, backyard. Then the fourth problem I can see is that it isn't like Lori lived in another city from her brother or even across town. It appears, from what I was able to find on the internet, that they lived in the same townhome complex. So they were right there together. It wasn't like they were a long way apart. He went off, did something totally different. She had no clue about it. None of that appears to be the case. And then the fifth problem, and I think the absolute most important, I am now going to play you some audio clips so you can hear what I think is probably the biggest problem of all. Now, let me set this up. The first clip is going to be some body cam footage from police who were called out to Lori Vallow's house. What happened was JJ was missing and Lori would not say where he was. This is all the way into November. So it's been some time since JJ was last seen. He was last seen back in September. It's now November, and she isn't saying where he is. His family, his grandparents, ask for a welfare check and say, we don't know where he is. She won't tell us. We want to make sure he's okay. So the Rexburg police go out to Lori's house and interview her on body cam. Now, only audio was made available to the public. So I'm going to play you the clip of what happens between the police as they show up and Lori as she explains where JJ is. So let's take a listen.
JJ would be where?
He's in Arizona.
Who's he with in Arizona?
He's with one of my friends in Arizona.
So
let me
JJ
start
would be where?
He's in Arizona.
JJ's in Arizona.
He's with one of my friends in Arizona.
Oh.
Hi.
Oh,
Hey.
you got a notepad?
No? Let me get one?
No. Come here. You mind if he comes in?
No, come on.
So,
Thank you.
Sorry.
who's the friend he's with?
My friend Melanie. Her son has.
So she's very specific. JJ is in Arizona with her friend Melanie. That would be Melanie Gibb.
Autism. Her name is Melanie Gibb. I gave him all the information on the phone.
Okay, so he can call him.
Yeah.
Discord.
Yeah. What is all this?
We're a little
What is
concerned
it? Why?
because, well, the officers who were here earlier
Yeah.
were checking and they got a bad vibe that like something was going on here because nobody knew anything about a child. They weren't talking.
It's because a
What's
lot of
going
stuff
on?
has gone on. If you want to know, it's a lot of stuff. So
Well, that's why we're concerned, because it just was kind of weird.
it is very weird. I've had to move around a lot. One of my brothers is trying to kill me. Not the brother that lives here, obviously. He's kind of my protector. My other
So, and I want you to notice something through here. All all the extraneous detail that Lori has and how much paranoia is involved in it with all of the people who want to kill her and harm her, and the explanations, many, many explanations, a lot of talking about why she had to do this, why JJ had to be sent away.
Brothers that was in with my husband who was trying to kill me for my $2 million life insurance policy.
Now,
So a lot of stuff has gone on in this last year. It's been a horrible year for us. I've had to move around. And so I was going to move back to Arizona, put my son back into the school there because I tried to put him in school here, public school at Kennedy. So I don't tell people the truth about where we are and what we're doing because of those reasons. So I look like a suspect, but I am not a good person. Raised all of my kids. I've done everything that I'm supposed to do in life, but everyone is causing me trouble right now. We moved up here in September. My daughter to go to BYUI.
your daughter goes to BYUI?
Yeah.
Does she live here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so she's very specific. Her daughter lives with her, and her daughter is at university. That's the same story that she told her friend Melanie Gibb. But in fact, well, we'll keep going.
Hi, Lori. Sorry to bother you again. We're up.
And so what happened was the police went, talked to her, left, and now they're coming back again with some more questions. And specifically, they say they want to talk to this Melanie who has JJ.
We're having
Melanie-
get a hold of your friend down there, Melanie.
Well, they were going to Frozen 2 today, so they may be at the movies.
Could you get a hold of her at some point and say, can you please call back the officer that's been trying to call you?
Okay, sure.
'Cause,
Yeah, because I think they are at the movies right now.
okay, he's been trying to call her or other officer. She's not answering.
Okay.
But if they're at the movie, that's,
Probably at Frozen 2 right now.
yeah.
Because that's the one thing he wanted to do.
So she's so specific that she thinks she's been in such close contact with her friend Melanie that she knows that her friend Melanie is at the movies. And why? Because her son JJ really, really wanted to go see Frozen 2. So she knows for sure that's where they are. And that's how specific she is with the police officer who comes out. So now let's hear a phone call recording by Melanie Gibb, because in the aftermath of this, Melanie called and secretly recorded a conversation she had with Chad Daybell and Lori. Chad and Lori were together. Melanie calls up and she's on speakerphone and she asks them some questions. This is both of these are part of longer videos, and I may well do a video where we just play the whole thing and talk through it. But for today, I just wanted to give you sort of the overview. So let's take a listen to this secret recording by Melanie. And then remember, Melanie's the one that she says has JJ.
And you told me they went there, and now he's not there. I was wondering
This
what
is
happened.
Melanie talking.
Well, I had to move him somewhere else
This
because
is
of
Lori.
her actions. So,
Was she doing something? Like, was she trying to come get him or something? Or, like, trying to kidnap him?
well, she said that lots of times before, but
Well, I was wondering why you told the police why he was with me.
And boy, isn't that the question? Why did you tell the police he was with me? I don't have him. Why would you say that?
I just needed to have somebody so I wouldn't have to tell them where he really was because they were going to tell Kay where he is.
Oh,
Kay is his grandmother, and she's saying, I wanted to make sure they couldn't find him and tell Kay, the dangerous grandmother, where he was.
yeah. So do you think it's like your family, or, like your family, your dad, or, those
Well, my
people?
family, well, not my whole family, but as you know, most of my family is working against me and
Yeah,
with her, basically.
yeah. Is JJ safe?
He is safe and happy.
Okay, well, that's good to hear.
And to be clear, the police think JJ has been dead for a couple of months by now.
Nellie.
Well, I know it sounds like it. I'm just worried for you guys because, You know, he's missing, and, you know.
I know exactly where he is. He's perfectly fine and happy. I don't know what your intention is on this phone call,
Well,
but I love with all my heart, and I have forever, and I will always love you.
I appreciate those words, but if you really loved me, you wouldn't have told the police that I had JJ with me. That's not what a friend does. I mean, that just makes me look weird, and it's not safe for me. That doesn't look good. I mean, you had to think of my welfare if you love me.
I do, and I did exactly what I felt the Lord was instructing me to do. And I appreciate you, and I love you.
So one of the reasons then that I think that this alibi is going to be so difficult is that it's dependent on Melanie Gibb. That was one of the three people listed in the alibi who were there and can, according to Lori, prove that Lori was not at Alex's house murdering JJ or Tylee, and therefore that she was cleared, that she had a positive alibi, she wasn't there, didn't do it. The problem is that Melanie says, you lied specifically about whether I had JJ. This is suspicious. This is weird. Why would you do that? And that's not what a friend does. You don't tell people, my friend has JJ, the missing boy, if you know for a fact that I don't. So I think Melanie is not likely to support this alibi. In fact, her statements so far haven't. So that's the number one reason why I think this alibi is going to be very difficult for Lori Vallow to make during the trial, because it's dependent on Melanie, on her boyfriend, and the other person accused of many of these murders, Chad Daybell, her husband. So the sixth problem, I think, is that very night, the welfare check happens, the police come to the house, Lori says, oh, it's no problem, he's with my friend Melanie in Arizona. That very night, Lori and Chad pack up and leave Idaho for Hawaii. And I think that's going to look suspicious too. Now, when it comes to Tammy Daybell, the excuse was, according to the excuse, sorry, the alibi. The alibi was that Lori Vallow was in Hawaii when Tammy Daybell died at the home of Chad Daybell in Salem, Idaho. Defendant was with Melanie Boudreau and/or Audrey Baratiero. We don't have as many facts to address this. The state has kept most of the facts around the Tammy Daybell issue pretty close to the vest. What we do know is that brother Alex's phone was nearby, and we know that Chad got increased life insurance for Tammy for $430,000 just shortly before she died. So that's about what we know. The prosecution has responded to these alibis, and what the prosecution has said is, first of all, it's filed too late, and that it was supposed to be done, actually in this case, years ago. I don't think that's going to get anywhere, primarily because the prosecution shot itself in the foot repeatedly by being so late on its own matters. Also, she's been declared incompetent twice, Lori Vallow. So I just don't think that the court is going to hold that standard here. It was 3 months ahead of trial. This is a serious charge of murder. So if I'm the judge, I'm not keeping this out due to it being late. But I don't even know if it's really that helpful to Lori Vallow in any event. The prosecution also said, look, the alibi isn't really going to apply to Tammy Daybell at all, because you're not accused of stabbing her or causing her to have a heart attack or to die suddenly. You're charged with conspiracy, and you don't have to be present to win on that one. You don't have to be there. And the fact that you were somewhere else isn't a defense. It's not really even relevant. The question is whether you conspired with Chad Daybell to have her murdered or to murder her. And they also say, look, and the alibi doesn't apply when you're charged with murder as a principal. In other words, we're going to say that you were directly involved in the deaths of Tylee and the deaths of JJ. You did it, you were present, and we're going to say you were absolutely fully liable and responsible for that. The state also listed the witnesses it was going to call in rebuttal to this alibi. And it was a pretty extensive group. First of all, they listed the very three of the people who were actually claimed in the alibi. Lori says they're going to help me, and the state says, oh, really? Because we're calling them. That was Melanie Gibb, Melanie Pawlowski, and David Warwick. All of them were supposedly going to help Lori, but the state says that's who we're going to call. Then there was also, they said, we're also going to bring in records evidence from Apple and from Google. Probably the Apple would be related to where Alex's phone was, perhaps where Lori Vallow Daybell's phone was. We don't really know that yet. And the Google business records would probably be searches. Surely she wasn't as crazy as the man recently who searched things like how to dismember a body. Surely she did not do that. But there may have been searches that were related to this that had something to do with what they're going to prove. They also said they would bring Rexburg Property Management, Sean Derrick, who's the owner official at Blue Sky Property, maybe to prove when she was in Rexburg or when she actually leased or let go of her lease of the property. They said they would call the wife of Alex, the brother who is now deceased, Zulema Pastinis, and we know that she knows some information and has testified in the past about Lori's statements related to religion, but we don't really know a lot about what she's going to say here. And then, of course, they listed 3 people from the Rexburg Police Department who would be coming. So it sounds like the prosecution is not particularly concerned about this alibi. And it does seem like Lori Vallow Daybell's team is going to have a lot of holes to fill in order to use this alibi. There are just a number of things that are going to make it very difficult. Now, let's talk real quickly about FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried. He is, of course, the founder of the cryptocurrency exchange, FTX. He is swimming in charges, and there was a brand new one this week. And it's a doozy because what he's accused of is paying $40 million to bribe a Chinese official. Apparently, the Chinese police had issued a freezing order for all of Alameda Research's crypto in China. That's Alameda Research was the hedge fund that was also owned, at least in part, by Sam Bankman-Fried and founded by him. And it was sort of a partner with FTX. The accounts of Alameda had $1 billion in crypto. And apparently Sam Bankman-Fried tried everything he could to get around that unfreezing. And here I can show you a copy of this is an example. Now he is now, as a new charge, accused of bribing these Chinese officials to try to get them, and he succeeded, to take the freeze off Alameda's funds so they could access them again. I seen from Sam Bankman-Fried's SBF's side, you can see his argument that the Chinese government took his funds hostage and he tried to get it undone legally, personally, couldn't, so he paid the ransom. And so his thinking, what's the difference between this and a major company getting its computers frozen and then paying off the hacker? That shouldn't be illegal. But in fact, there's a massive, huge difference. And this is the difference. The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Now, under the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, you can't pay if you know that any part will go either directly or indirectly to a foreign official to do or omit to do an act in violation of his or her lawful duty. In other words, you can't pay foreign officials to do things, because one of the things that this act is intended to do is protect American companies. When they go overseas, since it's illegal, then they can easily say to foreign officials, I'm sorry, I can't do it. It's illegal. And if anybody goes around that, then that undermines the authority of this act and the protection that's normally given to American companies. You also can't use it to can't bribe somebody to get an advantage in obtaining or retaining business. So you can't do it to pay somebody to do what they were supposed to do anyway, or to not do something violating what they weren't supposed to do, or to obtain business. And the charge is that he did that in a big way, paying $40 million to this one person. And then I want to do a quick a quick coverage of the Kohberger case too, which we absolutely will be following. I know that this is absolutely as big a case as it gets. This is the murder of the 4 college students in Idaho. And this week, Bryan Kohberger got some really big news. What the information he got, the government filed a brief saying that they wanted to present him with some Brady Giglio material. Well, you might say, what on earth is that? And that they wanted to keep it under seal. So this comes from 2 Supreme Court cases. The first one is Brady versus Maryland. And in that case, the Supreme Court said, look, the government can't hang on to evidence that would exculpate you, exculpatory information. That means they can't hang on to evidence that would show you aren't guilty, hide that from you, and then convict you by never showing you that information. If they know evidence that might help show you're innocent, they have to give that to you. That was extended then in a case called Giglio v. U.S., where the Supreme Court said that also includes anything that would show one of the state's witnesses isn't really credible. They aren't believable. And so if the prosecution has to turn over anything that would show the defendant is innocent or that would reflect on the state's witnesses and show they're just really not believable. We just want to show you that you can't believe them. So what that means is that the prosecution is going to have to, and always does have to, turn over, show you this now, has to turn over names, information about law enforcement officers who have been accused of untruthfulness, criminal convictions, candor issues, anything that would place their credibility into question. And I'm showing you now a document from the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement and describing what it is that they can't do. So the state said, look, we plan to turn over this information to Bryan Kohberger's team, but it's confidential as a personnel record. So we're asking for it to be put under seal. And the court granted that seal. So you may be wondering, what's the significance of this? And the problem is we don't really know because it was put under seal. And there's this huge array of what it could be. It could range from, hey, this is really significant, but it's probably not going to help Kohberger. An example might be maybe one of the officers had a criminal conviction for DUI or for domestic abuse. And while that's a significant issue, it's probably not going to make a difference in Kohberger's case. Or it could be that it's not significant and not really going to help him. For example, maybe the officer flashed a badge at the wrong time, in an inappropriate time. Well, that's probably not going to relate to this at all. But the third thing is it could be that it's significant and that it's likely to help Kohberger. It could be both of those things. An example there would be an officer who has been caught planting evidence. That could be huge. Now, of course, you would think if an officer was caught doing that, they probably would not still be an officer. Maybe it happened after the Kohberger incident. But all we know is that there is going to be some sort of evidence. We don't have any idea which of these tiers. Is it significant? Is it insignificant? Is it going to help Kohberger? Is it totally irrelevant and not going to help him at all? We honestly don't know. We do know it comes from a confidential internal affairs investigation. So why would they reveal it? Well, they have to. They have to reveal it under those 2 Supreme Court cases I told you about. It's also just smart to reveal it because this is a really serious case. The state is considering the death penalty, hasn't made a decision that it's announced yet. It's a serious case involving 4 murders, and it's gotten worldwide attention. So for all of those reasons, they'd be crazy not to do that. So I want to say thanks to Fish Face 123ism. I appreciate that very much. And let me go through real quick and see if there are any questions. I always like to answer questions if I can. And oh, my usuals will say, yeah, we know what Lee's going to say. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. We're going to be covering the Vallow Daybell case for the next many days, many weeks, actually. There is not a more significant, more interesting case that is happening. So please subscribe. You do not want to miss a minute of this case. It's so interesting. And so we would, and I'm looking through for questions, not seeing any. Also, the other thing is, please put your question marks at the beginning so that I can spot them when I run back through real quickly. It's a little bit easier. I think I've gotten all the questions answered, all the ones that were put out there. So I see that Dick asked a question about how do you submit an alibi if you're claiming the Fifth Amendment and still not forfeit that right? Well, I think the answer to that would be that you could use other people to submit your alibi, and that she hasn't claimed the Fifth Amendment yet because she's not in trial. So she has the right to testify or to not testify, and she may use other people to prove this alibi. For example, all the people she says were there and could show she was not the one. So I did see all the comments after my last live when everybody said, well that was abrupt. Lee's like, okay, that's the end, bye. And she hit the button and we're all like, wait, we're in the middle of a conversation. So I got the request that I do need an outro. I don't have that yet, but that's probably a really smart idea. If you have any suggestions for me on outro, I would love to have what they are. You can either submit it here in the comments, or you can submit it. Marlon's laughing like, yes, or you can submit it in the regular comments under this. I would love to hear from you if you have any ideas for me. I'm not as polished at some of this, and I know I need to do some of that, and I appreciate these suggestions. So I am now more slowly ending the video, but I know you're still doing your conversations. Thank you, History Underfoot. I'm glad you subscribed. And I am, as you know, doing live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday before we get to the trial at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. When we get into the trial, I am hoping to go every day. It's going to partly depend on, since it's not a broadcast, and I mean televised, it's not a televised trial. It's going to partly depend on my ability to get information, but I would like to go every day or pretty close to every day so I can keep you up to date on what happens every day with the trial. We may have to adjust our times. We're going to have a little bit of, figuring it out because Idaho's on a different time than Eastern Standard Time. So there's a little bit we've got to figure out, but for now, stick to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I will really look forward to seeing you again on Friday at 7.